and I love this album. So this is one of the first vinyl records I ever bought. Just because I knew I was gonna want to hold it up as part of a collection, because I like how sparse the album artwork looks, and I don't know. I just thought it looked kind of like peaceful and scenic. So I first heard Kacey in 2015 or so. She put out an album called Same Trailer, Different Park, and it was very country forward, but like Willie Nelson country, you know? So like it wasn't like pop country.
I'm on the road again.
Kinda, actually, yeah. There were some songs on there like that. Merry Go Round was her like really popular one off that album. And then she came out with something pageant queen. Man, I can't remember. But that one was also pretty good. Again, it kind of leaned into the country of it all. And I bought that album because, again, I liked Kacey when I first listened to her. And you know how I found her, dude? Pageant Material. That's the second album. So I found Kacey Musgraves because one day in high school, it must have been high school, I was so desperate to find new music and new musicians that I looked up like top 10 albums in 2014, and the rest of an article that I found by the Rolling Stone, it was like top 100 albums or top 50 albums from the year so far, because it was like halfway through the year, and Kacey's first album was on there. So I listened to a couple of albums that year. I listened to an album by The National. I listened to Same Trailer, Different Park. And I would be lying if I said that I wasn't drawn to the album because Kacey happened to be around my age and cute. I
remember Butterflies.
Yeah,
I
Butterflies.
remember that song.
Butterflies is pretty good. So,
and
fast forward.
Space Cowboy. Better call Steve Miller.
I was gonna say
Stole Space Cowboy.
Cowboy Bebop reference.
No, well that too.
Yeah,
there's a lot of
Space
Cowboy stuff.
Yeah. So I came for the cute, like around my age country girl, but I stayed because the music was really good. And fast forward to 2017, I forget when this album came out. I have it in my notes though. And 2018. Thank you. So that was the year that I graduated college, and I was at this point very invested in music production and engineering and all of the back end of the music recording process. So when this album came out, I showed it to one of my professors immediately. Shout out to Dr. Dave. I showed it to Dr. Dave with my friend Sarah because we were both huge. All right. It's not you, Dr. Dave.
Damn.
But the doctor is in, and he is here. I'm going to give someone a diagnosis.
The doctor's calling. Whatever shitty Megadeth song that is.
It sounded like one.
Because it does. Like, the first four notes of that song is literally just one.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, no, so I talked to Dr. Dave about it, and I showed him a couple of songs, and I was like, yeah, this is really good, and I need you to listen to this song. And I think we played him Butterflies we played him the first song, Slow Burn, and he listened to the rest of the album, and then he came into class one day and he showed High Horse, I think, and he was like, yeah, dude, I like the Britney Spears, like in Toxic, there's that bow 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 guitar that like plays in High Horse, and he was like, yeah, I really like that. So that was kind of my first indication that this album would do well, and sure enough, I'm pretty sure it won album of the year in 2018 when it came out at the Grammys, for good reason. because it is produced really well, it's written really well, performed really well, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's like 10 songs, and Mother is kind of like an or not 12, it's 12 songs. Wait. 13.
Tell
It's
your
13.
children not to walk my way.
It just keeps... Guitar Hero 2 was last week.
Mother!
The track list keeps getting longer. But anyway.
Mother, should I run for president? Mother, will you try to break... There's a lot of songs called Mother.
Yeah. Well, and this one isn't even one of the best on the album. But you have a song like Slow Burn, which does exactly what it sets out to do. And it's about like 5 minutes, and it is very soft and slow, and it eases you into this album experience, which I would argue is... like, it has highs and lows, but it's definitely a chill album. Like, this is an album that you put on when you're just, I don't know, like maybe
sitting on the porch with a blue
sitting
drink.
on the porch, yeah, blue drink and like a good, you know, a good joint, and like you're just like chilling out, and or it's like raining, you know, and you're just like trying to enjoy your night in, you're trying to get work done. Butterflies is obviously, I think it was one of the singles, but when it came out, it highlighted that the difference between this album and her last couple would be the fact that her last couple embraced the more acoustic, forward, Western, like folk country inspired music that she was writing at the time. And this album takes that style of music, but just ups the production value ever so slightly. So you have a lot of really cool different sounds happening, not necessarily just instruments, but electronic production as well. You have more dialed in bass and drum sounds. So the low end on the album feels very controlled and purposeful. Whereas I feel like on some country albums, like the bass is usually it's a stand-up bass, and it doesn't have as much presence as like an electronic bass would. But then you do have a couple of acoustic songs, like natural acoustic songs on here. Like Love is a Wild Thing is probably one of my favorite songs on here. It's very, I don't know. It transcends country. That's what I will say about this album. It transcends country and pop and like psychedelic rock as genres, and it just creates its own sound. And you see that on songs like Space Cowboy, which it is very like it takes the you just have to ignore him. You just gotta not look him in the eyes, and he'll go away.
But I'll bust it out right now. Start playing Space Cowboy.
But I will say, you know, a hallmark of the country music genre is like clever titles, like witty titles. So in this case, the song Space Cowboy, in the context of the song, she says, you can have your space, cowboy, you know, because like she's dating a southern boy, and he's like riding off onto the sunset on his own. And so she's like, all right, I guess you don't need me, so you can have your space. You know, like I can tell you're kind of, you're moving away. So it's like, I don't know, it's kind of cool. And then they utilize sounds that remind me of like, I don't know. There's a David Bowie song that uses like the guitar slide up, like the, you know, and you also have higher energy songs like Wonder Woman and High Horse, which again capitalizes on the country, like the spaghetti western style guitar, the where it's like plucked really like thinly, and it's hard to describe parts of this album because again it maintains its own very specific identity. And I guess the reason why it's so low on my list, 8 in this case, is there are a couple of songs on here that I usually skip. Mother is one of them, just because it's so short, and the next song after that, Love is a Wild Thing, I just want to get to that, you know. Velvet Elvis, I can take or leave. Lonely Weekend, it's the second song on the album, but sometimes I just want to move from one thing to another. And it doesn't always feel like the contour of the album was like in mind when they wrote the songs. Again, I would argue that the contour and the order of an album usually aren't really considered when you're writing songs for an album, but in some cases you can get away with it. In this case, I feel like some songs kind of disrupt the flow of the vibe that this album creates. But then you have the songs Golden Hour and Rainbow to end the album, and Rainbow is probably, it's one of those songs that like you're either going to really, really like as an album closer or you're not going to like as an album closer, because it's just Kacey and a piano. And so for some people it's kind of like end credits music, you know, and it like fits perfectly. But for some people it doesn't sound climactic enough, you know, and you're kind of hoping for something bigger. But if you're going to start listening to this album from top to bottom, you'll probably end up listening to Rainbow because it presents itself as a chill experience up front, you know. So listening to it on its own is a kind of a different story. But overall, I think I gave this song, I have 4 skips on this one out of 13, which is still to say that I love it very much, and it's one of the newer albums on my list. I think it's the second newest, and I'm not going to give away the newest album on my list because that is currently sitting really high, so I want to kind of save that as a surprise for our listeners, our viewers, or anyone who is still waiting for me to put out my top 10 albums video on YouTube. But I promise that's coming soon. So David, you'll know what the list is, and you'll be able to listen to those albums. Hopefully we can listen to them together. But I don't know if that'll add any weird pressure for you to say good things, because I'm right there. Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. So anyway, definitely check out Golden Hour by Kacey Musgraves, especially if, like me, you kind of have this idea of what country music sounds like and stay away from it for those reasons. Because this album showed me that country music, 1, doesn't all sound the same, but 2, can have a lot more depth and layers than music that I, even 5 years ago, would have considered like super deep and really good. So give it a chance. Let Kacey potentially change the way that you view music.